A number of years ago in the congregation I served in Fredericksburg, Virginia, we offered a multi-generational Sunday service called Noah's Dilemma, a reenactment, if you will, of the story with a few changes of Noah and the flood found in the Hebrew Scriptures. We had wide congregational participation, congregants playing Noah and his family, and also Noah's neighbor. We had congregants who waddled as ducks, who acted like monkeys, and who hooted like owls. That could work here, too. The reason I mention this service from years ago is that we also had congregants play the role of God. And yes, I said congregants. You see, there was more than one. In this story, God is a committee. Now that may seem strange to you, but I want you to recall from the story of Noah and the flood the roles that God played. There was the God of morality and judgment who said people must behave a certain way. There was the God of vengeance who made it rain for 40 days and 40 nights. And there was the God of love who promised to never again destroy the earth by flood. To be reminded of God acting in such disparate ways was quite unique for most of us who grew up with a very narrow, perhaps even a singular understanding of God. A few years earlier, as part of a Unitarian Universalist young adult group here in Atlanta, and before I was a minister, for my birthday I invited my friends to bring an image of God. Now, some of you are hung up on the idea that I used to be part of a young adult group. I'm going to give you a moment to reconcile that idea in your mind. Are we good? All right. One friend to my birthday party brought a seashell, another a feather, yet another a picture of the cosmos, and one friend brought a picture of her dyslexic dog. Okay, all right. I'll give you a few seconds on that. I celebrated my birthday that way because a number of us, most of us who were new to Unitarian Universalism, had been part of a group discussing God language. What we found in our discussions is that for Unitarian Universalists, or at least for this group of young adults, that there was no consensus about how God was understood, that God meant something different to each person who used the word. Personally, I think this is also true of non-Unitarian Universalist congregations, but it is only in UU congregations where we are permitted to say it out loud and feel good about it. In our discussion group, the conversation would sometimes get more challenging. The question became, what then does it mean to speak of God in a Unitarian Universalist Sunday service? Some believe that if God were used in a Sunday service, for example, in a reading or a hymn, it was okay to use it without further elaboration and simply allow the word God to resonate with individuals in whatever way they understood God. An even greater challenge was that some, and perhaps many, perhaps most, had no use for the word God at all. This stemmed as much from personal belief as it did from contemporary culture, where the biggest word we have, God, is often wielded as a weapon, threatening people with plague or punishment, or with claims that my God is bigger and better and badder than your God. As an aside, sometimes people ask me if I believe in God. These days I answer, it depends. Now that may sound like a flippant answer, but is anything but flippant. If I've been talking to someone whose God judges and condemns people, I become the atheist, knowing in my heart that that is not a God I believe in. And after I have listened well, and that can be very hard, and I often come up short, I then try to speak about God in ways that I find most affirming, like the God of the Universalists, the God of love, the God of hope. Today I find it quite meaningful to have a foot in both camps, to see and understand and value both the atheist and the person who speaks of God. So the question remains, outside of hymns or readings, how do we speak about God? How do I speak about transcendent truths and transcendent realities from this pulpit? In other parts of my life, I've very often found that clarity is good. Being clear has saved me from great disaster more than once. Connie brought it up for us yesterday. You're going to hear Connie a couple times in this sermon. I think there is great value in using this insight in how we speak theologically as well. The religious or spiritual quest is our search for truth and meaning. I believe the quest is made all the more fruitful, all the more meaningful, if when we speak publicly, when we speak out loud to others, that we be clear about the reality and the way we understand it. In Unitarian Universalism, and at our Sunday services in particular, we come together to lift up and celebrate what is of ultimate worth. Again, we learned this from Connie yesterday. This is the meaning of worship, to lift up what is of worth. I believe that the better we are able to bring clarity to what we value, to what inspires us, then we bring a greater richness to all that we do. So let me take a few moments and speak about the various ways that I or we might speak about some of the most profound of human experiences. This morning, through our Story for All Ages, I hope you heard dozens of different ideas and experiences that are some of the most meaningful that we have in life and that many call God. In Kathy Middleman's written description of the choir's anthem this morning, she wrote of the intent of Foray to lift up beauty, restfulness, and peace, all attributes of God, if not God itself. Because there is ample room for confusion about what is meant by God, in my sermons, I actually am less likely to use the word God. I choose instead to lift up one or more of the ubiquitous ways that we lift up and experience transcendence in life. There is the awesomeness of creation. This is not of the six-day variety, but it is the driving force, whatever that is, that has given birth to this vast universe and to life itself. I want a way to describe that impulse that is our common ancestor, that has given birth to all that exists. And it is the continuing creative force in the universe, found in imagination, the attraction between mates, and in the heart of the artist and the poet and the scientist. There is the ineffable dimension of life. It acknowledges a deepness, a vastness, a profoundness to life that transcends our ability to describe or comprehend. It is the mystery. It is mystery, evoking the unknown and the unknowable. I think we would be humble to admit that. There is the nurturing feeling of being warmly embraced by something outside ourselves or from within ourselves. It is connection. It is belonging. Tremendous senses, transcendent senses we have. There is that sense of meaning and purpose. It is the process of becoming more whole, of oneness. It is healing, a change of heart. It is forgiving and accepting forgiveness. There is the God of pantheism, where God and the natural world are one and the same. To the pantheist, to be part of the world is to be part of God, and for God to be part of us. And there is that enduring center, the ground of being, says Paul Tillich, that enabling stability that is at the center of all existence. And there is love, and that is love with a capital L. It is that endless wellspring of care and concern, especially in the face of one's enemies. There is the mystic's beloved, a feeling of intense union with a reality beyond the self and beyond our ability to describe. There is the God within, that is the divine spark within each person, or as our first principle says, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And if you have heard enough of my sermons, you know that I want to change our first principle to the inherent worth and dignity of every being. There is justice, the moral arc of the universe that calls us to witness and to act and to advocate on behalf of others, but not just for others, because there is also interdependence, the interdependent web of which we are a part, which help us understand that what we do for others, we do for ourselves. There is hope, the knowing in the heart that no difficulty is forever. And for some, transcendence is not described as God, but as goddess, a celebration and recognition of the divine feminine. Finally, and I say finally because it's only the last in my list. The list is much larger than I could possibly enumerate. Finally, and certainly not least, I contend that the Hindu god Shiva, the god of destruction, needs greater appreciation by Unitarian Universalists. UUs who are typically positive and optimistic often underappreciate the destructive dimension of nature. This is not a negative. It is understanding the nature of change, of the rhythms and cycles of life. As I hope you can appreciate, simply speaking of God leaves room for much misunderstanding, especially when so many in our culture speak of God in harmful ways. This is the beauty of Noah's dilemma, where it is made clear which God is speaking. What I've elaborated this morning is not a change in practice for me. As I reflected on the sermons I've done, I believe I've been clear when I've spoken of the transcendent. Through our Sunday services, we speak of acting out of love. We speak of offering forgiveness. We seek wholeness. We celebrate interdependence, and so much more. In each of these, we are lifting up the deepest desires of our hearts, and we are speaking of the reality in which we move and seek to thrive. This morning I have spoken about being clear in our Sunday services. I also believe there is value in being clear in our personal conversations as well. In our Unitarian Universalist congregations, we have members who believe in God, and we have members who identify as atheists, agnostics, and humanists, and all are welcome in our quest for truth and meaning. In my conversations, some without prompting will tell me they are atheists. When someone says that they don't believe in God, or if they tell me they do believe in God, I always want to know more. To the atheist, I am likely to say, now I have some idea of what you don't believe. Please tell me what is most important to you. And when I hear someone say they believe in God, I am likely to say, now tell me about the God you believe in. Whenever we come together, whatever the topic, whatever your belief, I want to know what brings you alive. Whether you believe in God or don't, I want to know what touches you most deeply. I want to know how you understand and experience the world, and I want to know what you are committed to. My hope is that we are able to speak and listen to each other and grow in our experience of the world and in our appreciation of one another. May it be so.